Hi everyone, it's Shannon here. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, we are going to create 4 Christmas cards with the Christmas Stripes paper pad, as well as several full panel dies. These cards were really quick and fun to put together, and I used almost all the scraps, so I can't wait to share these cards with you. We're going to start with Waffle Flower's Christmas Stripes paper pad. This was designed by J.J. Bolton, and a lot of the full panel dies work really well with this. I'm just going to open this pad up and flip through so you can see some of the pattern papers in this pad, as well as grab a couple of those full panel dies. This is the Big Dots die here, and you can see how when you place this die over the panel paper, the pattern paper, you get like half-half circles, which is really cool. And the new Christmas tree panel die, if you place it over this piece of striped paper, you also get half Christmas tree. So it's really fun to kind of play with these different full panel dies and this pattern paper. This is a new die as well. This is the angle stripe panel die, and you can see it works really well with the diagonal striped papers in this paper pad. I've already gone ahead and trimmed down 2 different sheets of pattern paper from the pad to create 2 A2 panels. Actually, it creates 4, but I'm not going to use the other 2. I've also trimmed down some white cardstock to create an A2 panel, and now I'm going to adhere these 2 panels, this thinner striped vertical one and the white, onto this foam adhesive sheet. This is a little bit thinner foam adhesive, and it runs through the die cutting machine really well. So I'm going to just peel off the backing and then center my first piece of, or my first A2 panel onto it and stick it right down. Once I have that stuck down, I'll then put that panel aside, grab my white panel, and just repeat the process. Remove the backing on that foam adhesive panel, stick it right down to the back side of my white panel, and then I'll set that to the side. And now I'm ready to die cut these 2 panels with my chosen panel dies. I'm going to use the Christmas tree die on the left, and on the right the Big Dots die. So I just went ahead and ran these through my die cutting machine. I'll hold it to the camera. You can see how well the die cut through not only that cardstock but also through the foam adhesive. So I'm now going to move on to that second piece of pattern paper. I'm not going to add any foam adhesive to the back side of this. I'm actually just going to die cut this with the Big Dots die. So I just centered it, then ran it through my die cutting machine, and now I'm going to remove the die, and I'm going to keep all the parts, all the dots, as well as that frame that kind of is left from die cutting with the Big Dots die. So I'm going to put those aside, and we are going to start kind of adhering things down. So I have an A2 top folding white card base here. I'm going to start by removing the frame on this Big Dots die panel, and I then am going to remove the backing and start to pop out all of the circles. And once I get all those kind of popped out, I will be ready to kind of stick this down. I am just sticking them down onto the backing right now. I'll probably save those and use those later for another project because they will work just like almost like foam dots. So they'll work well for another project. So now that I've removed all the dots, I'm just going to stick it down to my card front, and I'll actually set this panel aside. I'm now going to move on to my second card base. So I have another A2 top folding white card base. Going to add some liquid glue to the back side of that pattern paper that I die cut with the Big Dots die, and just stick that down. So now I have these 2 card fronts ready to start adhering some of these little trees that I die cut with this with the Christmas tree die and that striped pattern paper. Now the Christmas tree die lines up really well with this striped pattern paper. You get these half tones or half Christmas trees, which I think are so fun and really pretty, and they really shine when we start kind of pulling them out of that pattern paper and using them on other projects. So I'm just popping them out here. I am adding them in a particular order, so I'm going a pattern. I'm going red, blue, green, red, blue, green, and that will create kind of these diagonals of the same color. I am going to mess this up at the very end here, but I did it intentionally because I know how many I need for the second card front. So here I'm going to break with the pattern and do another red instead of a green, and that's because I need one more green for the second card. And I don't think anybody will really notice that I broke with the pattern for that first card. So for the second card here, the pattern is just red, green, red, green, red, green. I have more red greens. If you look at the the Christmas tree paper. I have more red grains than I do have blue, so I'm not going to use any blues for this card front. And actually, when I'm all done, I only will have one little blue Christmas tree left over, so I think that's pretty good use of all those trees. So now I'm going to move on to my third card. Just have an A2 top folding white card base here, just removed the frame and backing on the Christmas tree panel and just stuck that right down. So now I have 3 card fronts pretty much done. I'm going to move on to my fourth and final card here, and this is the dimensional frame left over from the Christmas tree panel. I just removed the backing and stuck that down to the front of my fourth card base. Now here, this last frame is not dimensional. It's cut from the pattern paper that I didn't add the foam adhesive to, and I'm just going to add some liquid glue to the back of that and place that around that Christmas tree dimensional front, and that just adds a little different look, and I kind of frames it out nicely. So I'm now going to move on to my sentiments. I went ahead and die cut with the Merry Christmas word die 3 outlines out of black cardstock, and then I used the shadow die from that set to die cut some vellum. I'm first going to add some liquid glue to the back side of one of my black Merry Christmases and add it to the front of that vellum. Then I'll make sure I get that little dot for the eye, get that down, and then I'll move on to my other 2 layers. I'm first going to add some liquid glue to the front of one Merry Christmas and add it behind to the back side of the vellum to add some dimension, and then my final Merry Christmas I'll add to the top. So the vellum is sandwiched between some of the Merry Christmases just for a little bit of dimension. I'm now going to move on to a second sentiment. I die cut 3 Merry Christmases out of white cardstock, and I'm going to heat emboss one of them. So I did smush it with my Versamark ink, poured on some silver embossing powder, then heat set. Then I did the other half, just so I have this whole Merry Christmas covered in that beautiful silver embossing powder. I also am going to do the little eye here. One of the little eyes kind of stayed inside of this negative, so I'm just using it to kind of hold it and transport it. If your little eye doesn't stay inside, you can always use kind of stick it down to a scrap of white cardstock. And after you adhere it to that scrap, it's just easier to kind of maneuver it and hold it in place because it's so small. I just finished adhering the second tittle on top of the first, so now that little dot for the eye has a little bit more dimension. And now I'm going to set that aside to dry while I adhere all of my other 3 Merry Christmases together, starting with the 2 white ones, just stacked those one on top of the other. And then I will grab that silver embossed Merry Christmas, add some liquid glue to the top of this 2 stacked white ones, and stick that one right on top. Now I'm not quite done. I still have that little tittle to deal with. So now that the glue is dried and it's still nice and tucked inside that little negative, so it's making it easy. I just tapped the top of it with some Versamark ink, dipped it in some clear embossing powder, and then heat set that. And now that is ready to go onto my card front. But before I add my sentiments, I do have a sub sentiment that I want to create. I have the Merry Christmas sentiment stamp set. I stamped these 2 banner sentiments in VersaFine Onyx black ink onto white cardstock, and now I'm just going to fussy cut them out and then use a Copic marker to kind of go over the edges. It just kind of cleans it up a little bit. And now my 2 sub sentiments are ready for my card fronts as well. So these are the 2 cards that I chose to add these sentiments. I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back side of our vellum and black sentiment and stick that down to my card front. Then I'll finish with my banner sentiment, but I want to add a little dimension, so I've cut 2 thin strips of black cardstock, adhered them together, and now I'm going to just snip them a little bit to make this strip a little bit smaller, so I kind of have these smaller segments that will fit better behind this banner, and I'll just adhere these kind of stacked strips to the back side. This will just add a little bit of dimension, and it will equal about the same height as my Merry Christmas word cutout, so that kind of goes together nicely. I'm now going to move on to my second card here, add some liquid glue to the backside of that embossed Merry Christmas, and I'm also going to add a little dot there for the tittle and pop out my little silver tittle and pop that right on top. And once I get that in place, I'll finish with one of my banner sub-sentiments. Again, I added some stacked cardstock to the backside of that just to also pop up that banner as well. And that will actually complete these 2 cards. So now we've got 2 cards done and we're ready to finish up the other 2. So for our next card, I'm actually going to use these circles or leftovers from the pattern paper that we die cut with the Big Dots die, and I'm going to arrange them in an order here, going from red to pink to light green to dark green and then blue, and then just repeat that over and over again. I'm overlapping each one a little bit and also creating like this circle because I'm going to actually create a wreath with these big dot circles. So I'm just now kind of fine-tuning them now that I've got them all in their order, and once I get that in a nice circle, I'll then grab a piece of press and seal and place it right on top to hold all of those circles in place. Once I have that in place, I'll then pick it up, turn it over, and then grab some leftover scraps from that foam adhesive sheet and cut it down and just add it to the back side of this wreath to kind of hold all of those circles in place. Now I've already gone ahead and stamped and heat embossed a sentiment here on the front of our 4th card base, and I'll just remove the backing on that foam adhesive, center this, and stick that wreath down. And I'm almost done with this 4th card. All I have left to do is just add some fun embellishments. I'm going to add these silver kind of enamel dots and then finish up with a black and white twine ribbon. Just use a little bit of glue to stick that down. And that actually completes that card. Now for my last card here, I've already gone ahead and stamped and heat embossed a sentiment from the Big Dots holiday stamp set onto some black cardstock, trimmed it down, and then added some foam adhesive and added it to my card front. And now all my cards are complete. I just love how bright and festive and happy these cards are. This is the first card that kind of inspired it all, where we had this beautiful piece of striped pattern paper that I die cut with the Christmas tree panel die, and that created all these additional little half-tone Christmas trees that I've added on this card here, which is nice and clean and simple. Love the little bit of dimension from the foam sheets. Here is the second card that I used all those little Christmas trees for. Love it paired with that beautiful piece of pattern paper that I die cut with the Big Dots die. And here's the 4th and final card where I used the circles left over to create that really fun wreath. So I really had a great time creating all these kind of clean and simple modern Christmas cards, and I just think this beautiful Christmas stripes paper pad is really the key. It's so fun to kind of work with such a beautiful color palette and some really clean graphic design. I hope you guys enjoyed today's cards and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. And if you like this video, I'd so appreciate if you left me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.